Hey YouTube! Alright, so this video is by request in my previous breadth year video, and I'm gonna go a little deeper or broader, on what my breadth year looks like for me personally. Just as a recap, I'm doing the breadth year in preparation for a depth year in 2020, and the purpose for me of a breadth year is to get a chance to do certain things that for me are kind of preparation for figuring out what I want to focus on in a depth year, for clearing some things out of my life so that I can better go deep in 2020. So obviously if you're interested in the idea of a breadth year, you come up with your own rules, you figure out what you need to do for your life, but here's a little bit about what I came up with. So one of the things that I've already sort of checked off the list and done a couple of videos on was basically redoing or resetting my KonMari. So I didn't have to do a whole redo because that's kind of the whole point of KonMari, but I went through again and found some things that had sparked joy a year ago that weren't sparking joy now. I may still do, I kind of like doing it every year, so I may still do this at the beginning of 2020 or maybe at the very end of 2019. But I find that getting things, out of my line of sight that I'm not doing anymore is a really good way to be prepared for depth year. Also kind of related to this, I've been refining my personal style and obtaining key items. So one part of a depth year tends to be lower spending, not necessarily no spend, but more limited spending. And so I figured since I've been going on this journey of figuring out my personal style in 2019, I can probably get most of what I need before 2020 and then not really have to buy many new clothing or accessory items and try to stay off of Etsy, etc., looking for those things. So I have very recently, I'll probably do a video on this, but I recently did the kind of summer round of shopping for that. Digitally, there's a lot of stuff I need to clear out. So I think just getting the feeling of digital clutter off my mind would really be useful for a depth year if I can manage it. So one of the big things I want to do this year is clear out my Evernote. Also, there's been a lot of speculation about how long Evernote's going to last. So getting it, pared down before I potentially may have to transfer it to another platform seems like a good idea. But even aside from that, just there's a lot of things in my Evernote that I saved that I don't really need anymore. So going through that and figuring out what can I actually use and making sure it's appropriately tagged and in the right folder. Also along the same lines, going through and deleting digital stuff that I'm never going to want to use or read. Now I do have a lot of stuff, and it is a lot, but I genuinely want to read a lot of the stuff I've collected. I have ebooks, I have zines online, I even have, I went through this whole phase of, this is really nerdy, just nerd warning. I went through this entire phase of collecting syllabi because I was kind of jealous of people who went to these really good liberal arts colleges and got to read all these cool books and take all these cool classes, and I realized you can find syllabi online. So I have this whole folder of syllabi to be I could read these books. It's tempting to just delete them all, but I think honestly, I am interested, especially Oberlin. Oberlin seems like the coolest experience possible. But only keeping the ones that I really think that I might be interested in. So then, also digital, but kind of on a different note, I would like to go ahead and watch Let's Plays of games that I never want to actually play, because I've figured out a lot about what I do and don't enjoy when it comes to gaming, and I'm not really a gamer, but there are certain things that I really like. For example, you may have seen my Sims 4 Career Legacy Challenge. I love The Sims. So just acknowledging that there are games that I enjoy watching and I want to see the storyline, but I don't want to play them. And going ahead and just watching those Let's Plays, and then I can take them off my Steam list and be look, you're not going to buy this. And then next year, in the depth year, I can pick, a few games that I actually want to spend time playing. I also want to try, I don't know if I can do this in a year. I might not actually be able to based on the number of DVDs I can have out at a time, but I still have a DVD subscription to Netflix. I would like to be able to cancel that. So I want to try to just watch all the DVDs in my queue. I think it's about 25. It's not that many. Clear that out and cancel a DVD subscription. And then also on the flip side of the games, like I would like to go ahead and, like I said, like choose a few games and then maybe buy games this year, but just buy a few games that I actually want to play. Same with board games. Like there might be a few games that have been sitting on my list for a long time that I should just go ahead and buy, but then next year not be buying the games. I am actively in the process of doing kind of music discovery or trying to refine my musical interests. So I have a ton of things that I just saved to Spotify because I saw a Tiny Desk concert or I heard about it on NPR or something. And like just listening through some of those albums, deciding what I like, what I want to keep. I have a whole like bullet journal. Do I have it here? I have a whole bullet journal spread. I can actually show you. That I've been using to review albums and giving them like stars, but then also more importantly, here we go, giving them a little description so that I remember what the heck the album was, because I don't think Spotify is nearly as good as iTunes in this way. You can't really tag things. Very frustrating. So that then next year I can focus on listening to things I already know I love and like digging in and, you know, listening to albums multiple times. Related to music, also trying to well, no, actually never mind, but related to music, I did just buy a piano. I like struggled with this for 2 years and I finally decided to buy a digital piano. It was a big purchase, but I really would like to get back to playing piano. It's like seriously a thing. Like it's a hobby that I'm pretty sure I would do because every time I go back to my mom's house, the first thing I do is walk into the house and sit down to play piano. And so I would just love to have my own, and I will in June. So got the piano, done, check that off. I would like to, so in the land of like habits and routines, I would like to kind of spend the 2019, which I've already been doing, figuring out like what is my flow with tarot and astrology, how do I actually use tarot and astrology, what is the practice I want to establish, and what is just too much for me. In general, I want to establish habits and routines and review the practices I have and tweak them as needed so that I can just do them in 2020. I would like to, in order to be able to control the flow of information to a level that actually makes sense, there's a few things I want to do. One is just fine-tuning my social media follows, my podcast follows, blog followings, until I can actually keep up on a regular basis and enjoy it. I've gotten some of the way there, but not all the way. And similarly, unsubscribe from email lists until I'm actually keeping up with email, because I just don't check my personal email, and that is very avoidant. I would like to, on the social side, say yes to social opportunities and deepen relationships to figure out what sticks, so that next year I can intentionally try to deepen specific relationships, and admit that some of them just, you know, are going to be surface level, and that's okay. And similarly, I want to try to restart having monthly board game parties, but I never really quite managed it, and I'm not sure I'm going to do it. So we're going to try in 2019. If it doesn't actually happen, we're just going to admit that board game parties are not a thing that's going to be in my life. One of the things that I think the original Depth Year guy talks about is, in his post, is like only going to places you've been in a Depth Year, which I don't know, even outside of the fact that I have to travel for work. I'm not sure I love that goal necessarily, but I am going to take a trip to Montreal this year, which is somewhere I haven't been, and maybe I could do that next year. In the lines of learning, so I mentioned the piano is one thing I want to work on in terms of study, and another one is Spanish. So I would like to start my Spanish learning practice, get into something of a rhythm. And then finally, at the very end of the year, I've planned a sabbatical from work. It's not really a sabbatical, it's just I've saved up PTO, but basically a sabbatical during the kind of winter holiday season, to have some time with myself, to do some creating, and to figure out like what actually really sparks passion and joy, and what do I want to focus on and what do I not want to focus on. So during that period, I think I will have learned a lot through all of this year, but then exploring what I really want to do in depth versus what feels ready to clear. So I do have a list right now of depth year guidelines, but I'm going to refine those at the end of the year. And I will probably just record a video when I get to that point, talking through what I decided to keep and what I maybe tweaked for my depth year. So yeah, that's my sort of breadth year guidelines. Feel free to comment below if you're doing a breadth year, and let me know what that looks like for you. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more of this kind of content.